So without further ado, if you'll all join me in welcoming Matt to the stage, we'll get started.
Microphone, this is exciting.
Hello.
Do you want me to do like an introduction or anything to me?
Go for it.
Hello, I'm Matt Dix, I'm from Leeds Indie Foods. Thanks for coming to an event in our festival. I hope you go to lots of other ones. There's only 4 days left.
Yeah. Woo! So, yeah, we're towards the back end of the festival, I guess. So the promotional chat is probably going to be slightly less tonight, I guess.
Top of the bill.
There you go. But yeah, so we'll start with you, I guess. Obviously, you've just said you're the co-founder of Leeds Indie Food, and we're obviously putting this on for the festival. But can you tell us more about what you do in your day job before we go into all the indie food stuff?
Yeah, for my day job, I do loads of sort of probably too many jobs. Right. Partly I do Leeds Indie Food, I guess now. That's become my job. So we put on food festivals. I also do various bits of social media and copywriting and business development and stuff for small independent food brands. And also I do things like cook Patty Smith's burgers at street food events. So I'm a street food cook and manager, I guess.
So we'll be tasting some of your burgers this evening?
I probably will struggle to cook them from here, but yeah.
So you can't vouch, but I'm sure they'll be
if they're bad, I'll tell some people off.
Okay.
Well, no, I won't. That's not.
They won't be bad though. It'll be fun. Okay, so how did you get into food? How did it all start food-wise for you?
I've always worked in food and drink, I think. From when I was a teenager, there was only one job in the town where I grew up, which was working in the bingo hall. So I spent a lot of time serving pies and chips and more pies. And people in the small Midlands town where I grew up were very particular about their pies. At university, I always worked in bars and kitchens and stuff. Most of them were really shit, so nothing particularly exciting. I didn't do a stage at Noma or anything like that. And then I went to university, and I did a lot of university for a while. I did 3/4 of a PhD, and then decided it was really boring, and I didn't want to sort of do that anymore. So I quit, and I started working for street food vans. And because it seems like a cool way to cook, and you can go to music festivals, and people think you are cool. Just basically, that's why.
It's a good reason to get into anything, really.
And lots of free food.
Yeah. So the first foodie pop-up or van, or what was the first like real one in a festival that wasn't in a bingo hall?
The first one in a festival was Fish Hand. I used to work for Fish Hand, and Andrew Critchett, who is a kind of, I guess he's like a founding father of street food in Leeds. He said, "Does anyone want to work any gigs over the summer?" And I DM'd him on Twitter and said, "I've worked in kitchens before, and I'm not a twat." Which is like kind of all you need to be, I think, in street food. Got that job, and then I ran trailers for him for a year, and that was fun, and I smelled a lot like fish. And Lil, who is my wife, somewhere over there, had loads of really great things where I came home at sort of 3 in the morning and got into bed, and she said, "You get out of bed, you have a shower."
Yeah, I think you had squid on the menu quite a lot. That's not
a lot of squids, a lot of fish, a lot of batter shoes, that kind of thing.
Nice. So, like, influence-wise, who influences you food-wise? I know you like cooking out of the pop-up scene. You like cooking in general. So, who influences you?
Food trends in sort of the country, I guess. I enjoy cooking British food and English, even English food, I suppose. We're in quite a kind of stage where everyone's a bit nationalist at the moment, but yeah, English food. I enjoy cooking meat simply and vegetables simply and stuff like that. If we're at home, we cook things very simply with good produce, I guess, which is kind of a bit of a buzzword. But yeah, if I was to do anything off my own back, it would always be well-cooked, traditional kind of English food. I think that it's not really a thing. Like, if I asked anyone to go to an English restaurant, I don't know where you'd go. I mean, I suppose you'd guess the Reliance, but it doesn't bill itself as that.
Yeah. How do you feel about people like Jamie Oliver then coming in and creating these great British food books, which are kind of, they're what you're talking about, but they're also not, I think you'd hate me referring to that kind of side of things.
Yeah, I think that the kind of great British, it's all right. I think there's a lot of food traditions that we have lost, or that are things that your gran cooked, but your gran didn't cook very well, maybe. Yeah. Like, everyone assumes that their gran's roast dinners were the best. My gran's roast dinners were quite good, but now I remember it was all quite grey. and there was a stage where all of her stuffing balls tasted of washing up liquid, which I think she wasn't doing the washing up very well. I don't know. But yeah, I think that there is, people feel like they need to revitalise British food by adding in tikka masala, which I guess is British, and adding in kind of exotic spices and stuff like that, whereas it's quite easy to find British foods. It's the food that isn't the other foods, and just cook it really well.
Yeah, I guess when Jamie Oliver's cooking it, it's easy to make something look good, and he tries to get the nostalgia from the country, I guess. Yeah. Whereas if your nan cooks shit food in the first place, it's not really.
Yeah, exactly. You don't necessarily remember a really great food tradition, and I imagine, to be honest, loads of Italian people don't remember a great food tradition. I think I read somewhere recently that Dr. Urca is the best-selling food product of frozen pizzas in Italy, which is really incredibly depressing.
Yeah, I don't think they'd feel that happy about it either, to be honest.
No.
But one thing Jamie Oliver is doing for that scene, I guess, is trying to bring a bit of understanding about where the foods came from. And I know he talks a lot about fish and chips aren't even British, but we rep it as our own and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, it is good. It's important to just work out where our food comes from, but I suppose once we've eaten it for 50 years, it's ours anyway, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
We can just claim it like we have done to the rest of the world.
It's quite a broad topic that we'll probably stay away from that one. So moving on, challenges involved with running a kind of pop-up van or a street food van. Obviously, it's just mental at festivals.
Yeah, things you don't have at festivals or in street food are, is anyone from environmental health? No. Sinks, not very often. Power tends to turn itself off during things. Things that can freeze anything doesn't really exist. So as long as you buy things every morning, you're usually all right, or if you've got anything that can last a weekend. So a lot of the festival food you're eating on a Sunday is stuff that's just been there since the Friday in a cool box, which is fine. I've never served a bad meal in my life.
So when you use words like fresh and never frozen, it's because you literally couldn't, not because...
Yeah, you can't freeze it, because fresh or defrosted on Friday.
Fair enough. Are there any kind of hidden gotchas that you didn't expect crops up whilst running it, or apart from the logistical errors?
We've done a lot of stupid things, I think. I've served a Guardian journalist probably the worst meal I've ever cooked, ever, by asking someone to make sure they told me when the Guardian journalist was ordering the food, and they didn't, which doesn't say a lot about the general standard.
Which journalist was it?
It was Tony Naylor, who writes for The Guardian. And that was at Beacons last year. Beacons is a really, really good music festival for food. Sadly, no more in terms of that, because it's now gone all metro. But there's a lot of stuff where you have accidentally turned things off, not noticed, and then given people food anyway. You have to make a calculation between, are people cross enough to be cross if you say it's going to be another 20 minutes, or would you rather give them some not quite exactly brilliant food? And that's the whole of being a street food cook, I think, is that just being able to just say, yep, she can have some rubbish food, or no, she can wait for...
How pissed is she?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. There's a lot of that. It's always fun. It's always fun. I enjoy music festivals a lot because you get loads of different types of people, and people come back and say, I haven't had this food for 1 whole year, I was here last year and I'm back. Or they say, can I have this food for free because I've taken loads of drugs? And you say, no, you can't. Beacons last year, someone, quite a small boy came up to and said, can I have some chips? And I said, yeah, that'll be £2 or whatever. And he said, I haven't got £2. And I said, we can't have any chips. And then he said, I'd like the chips. And then he put a chip fork into his mouth, a wooden chip fork, and just ate it until I gave him chips for free, in a really, really sort of keeping eye contact the whole time like that. And it was really, he's had a lovely time at the festival, and it was really, really, really disturbing.
And it was still the best food he had that weekend.
And he thought it was great, that chip fork, and then I gave him some chips just to get him to calm down and go away.
Yeah, you must see some states.
Yeah, a lot.
Let's just cut.
They all eat the food.
Yeah, exactly. So apart from, we kind of talked about Beacons and stuff, are there any other festivals that you've done the food vans at? Or is it mainly Beacons?
There's some great festivals. We do, one I'm going to be doing this year again with Patty Smith's, actually I did with Fish Hand last year, was there's a festival called Leroyca Britannia, which to everyone on Twitter looks like Erotica Britannia, but that's not what it is. It's about cycling, and it's like a vintage cycling race, where you can only enter it if your bike is from before 1975 or something. So there was it was hundreds and hundreds of Germans £50 in full lycra, and they would only pay with £50 notes. So they'd come up and say, like, can I have 17 chips? And you'd be like, yeah, we got a smaller note than that. Yeah, there's loads of them. You go around and do, there's just such a diversity in the festival culture now, because everybody would like street food at their festival. And that's turned out to be quite fun, because it doesn't mean you don't have to always do music festivals, and you don't have to do shit food festivals where you only sell chutney and stuff. You can do a wide variety of things.
I guess all the trends that are kicking off as well, there's a bit of diversity in that, and you get to go to German bike festivals and stuff,
exactly.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. And loads of other food as well. Like, no matter what you sell, you'll always be next to someone who sells Colombian arepas, or, you know, South American tacos of some bizarre kind and stuff like that. And no one ever pays for any food in street food, and no one ever, you know, there's a lot of swapping or stealing, I suppose, as well.
First rule of street food is you never talk about street food.
Don't, yeah.
So Leeds Indie Food, where did it come from? How did it all start?
It came from, I guess, a slight dissatisfaction with the food festival that exists in Leeds, as has existed in Leeds for the last so many, I guess 10 years, I think it is this year.
You've rehearsed that line, haven't you?
Yeah, a bit. I've done it. I've certainly trotted that line out a lot. It's there's definitely a place for the food festival in Millennium Square. And I've enjoyed it in the past and will continue to enjoy it, I imagine. But I worked it last year as a street food trader, and the weather was a bit shit and it wasn't great, and people didn't really get what we were doing, which is, you know, understandable, because it's a lot of people who have just heard there's a food festival and they have a wander around it. And we sort of arranged the festival originally with a few other people, all of whom work in food and drink, independent food and drink, and weren't enamoured with the offering, basically. It works really, really well for chains and for larger operators who have the money to put into a pitch on Millennium Square, and who have the right offer, which is about booze and free food and stuff like that. If you can't afford to give away samples, or if you can't afford to be very drinky in what you're doing, it's quite difficult. It's not, you know, it's not the worst thing ever. It's fantastic for a lot of things, but we thought there might be something different that we could offer for the independents in Leeds, and we think that the most exciting thing in food and drink in Leeds is the independent food scene. So we wanted to reflect that, I guess, and we didn't want to necessarily reflect that in the same way. We didn't just want a big market full of independents in a different square in a different time. We wanted to put on loads of events in the places that you go to, in the restaurants that you go to, in the bars that you spend your birthday in the cafes that you go for a coffee every morning with your laptop. We wanted it to be part of your sort of integral food and drink experience in Leeds.
Well, the main issue is, I guess, with those, I guess it's more corporate, or the barrier to entry is higher, but they assemble everyone in one place, and then you never really find out where they're from or whatever, or maybe in the corporate ones you do, but obviously the reason for this is you go into the watering holes that people are in all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and part of the reason we want to do this, and part of the reason I guess we're quite a way through the festival now, so we've been able to experience quite a lot of feedback, and we've heard from people what they liked and what they didn't like. Most of it they liked, which is good, I guess. But people have gone to events. People have, on the first night, me and Simon, who's another member of the team, went to a Marble Brewery beer dinner at the Cross Keys, and we were sat on a table with a few different guys, and they all drink regularly in the Cross Keys, so they'd seen there was an event on the Cross Keys, and they'd gone and they'd had a fantastic dinner. From there, they'd seen that there were other events on in other places, and they'd said, oh shit, there's a place called, what's this, Northern Monk? It's round the corner. And we said, yeah, it's just literally, you can literally see it. So they were planning to go to an event there, and they'd also seen that there was an event on in a coffee shop in Chapel Alton as well, which they'd never been to before, and they sort of planned out like a sort of little spider diagram of different things they were going to do. From the one independent that they usually go to, had branched out into 4 or 5 different ones that they were going to check out and they were going to try. They might not like them all, but if they like 2 of them, then we've done quite a good job, I guess.
Well, that's the thing. I've only lived in Leeds for 10 years, but I'm still finding places all over the place that I've never ever seen before. And there's a really good guide. I forget what it's called. It's a little black book. What's it called?
It's called The Little Black Book, I think.
There you go. Little Black Book, but it's really quite thick, and I never knew there were so many good places in the centre of Leeds that I haven't visited. So
it's I think it's one of the things we do incredibly well in the city is independent food and drink. We have a very defined city. I think the council define it as a 20-minute city, which means you can get in 20 minutes you can get from I think probably Holbeck, so Northern Monk or Cross Keys is the bottom, and then all the way to the top, which is, I guess, the university kind of thing, in 20 minutes on foot, and you can get the whole distance of it in 20 minutes on public transport. So we, unlike Manchester or London especially, if you want to go to craft beer bars, say in London, you go to one bar and you have 2 really, really lovely beers, and then you spend £40 on a taxi to take to the next bar.
Yeah.
In Leeds, you can get to 7 craft beer bars within a 2-minute walk, and it's that kind of contained, where our independent scene is contained. You can see the other bars from the other bars, which is also a thing you can do with Greggs. I don't know if you ever tried. If you stand in the doorway of a Greggs, you can always see another Greggs in Leeds.
So why are they not taking part of the Leeds Indie Food?
They're too big for us, and they don't need our help.
Apparently they do a good sausage roll, though. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
You know. So the Kickstarter, you kickstarted the campaign. You didn't, you got funding from everyone in Leeds.
Yeah, we said to Leeds, would you like an independent food festival? And then all of Leeds said yes, here's 25 quid. And we thought they'd say, here's 15 quid. So we did better than we thought. It was really, really good. It was a really nice way to start the festival off, I guess. We put it online in October, and to be honest, we did put quite a military level of precision kind of planning into it. And we got graphs and charts, and we knew exactly what we were going to ask for. We knew exactly how we were going to ask for it. And I think we exceeded that, which is really good. We got nearly £10,000 of people's money, which is really great. And then we realised that £10,000 is quite a little budget for a festival that's got...
When you have over 100
Yeah. So we ended up with 100 events and 100 businesses, and £10,000 is not enough money to pay for that. So we had to sell some more adverts and stuff. But essentially, it meant that loads of people supported us, loads of people thought the festival was a good idea, and we're also, the best ones, I guess, were almost sponsorship by independent businesses. So we had people like North Bar and the Reliance and stuff like that, and they were backing us from the start, so it meant that there was some momentum behind it. And I would recommend Kickstarter to anyone, as long as you have a really, really good plan, and if you don't get the money, you don't get really upset.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a few of them. There's IndieGoGo, which is one that you get the money regardless of whether you reach your target. How come you didn't go with that instead of?
Because I think if we raised £4,000, we would have been absolutely crackers to try and run a festival on it.
Is that the maximum you can do on there?
No, it's not. But I think if we weren't greedy with the total. We asked for £6,750, which was the absolute minimum we thought we could get by on to promote and print programs and arrange a festival of the scale we thought at the time, which was a bit smaller.
Right.
And I think that we could have gone for ones where if you don't reach the target, you get the funding anyway. But we felt that if we didn't reach £6,750, we should just go home, really.
Yeah.
Because you've got to be serious about what you're promoting, and you've got to be serious about what you're trying to do. And no one needs another thing in Leeds where you're just putting something on Twitter and saying, here's a really good event, Independence, great. Go to them.
Well, you owe it to the backers, don't you? I mean, you can't be doing a half-assed job.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to know that 150 or 200 people support us, and we need to know that those people are financially invested in the festival. We need to know that businesses want to advertise and stuff like that. I think from the start, but also in the last sort of 3 months especially, it's been increasingly clear that Leeds Indie Food is a very good thing that people enjoy, and that is really, really doing a good job of shouting about the festival. We have a very good press guy called Simon Fogel who's managed to get all of the festival into all of the papers, which is really nice, and we're not paying him this year. So it's become important to us, I think, that we do a really good job, and we've got a really long list of things we're going to do better next year, and at the top it just says be more professional. Just stop emailing each other with pitched gifs, and just do normal work like it's your job.
Well, you mentioned the press there. I was going to mention the BBC coverage. You got the it was local, but then it went national at the start of the week, was it?
The BBC article, yeah, on BBC News. It was escalated from Leeds to England or the UK or whatever during the week. Yeah, which is
pretty
really
good.
Nice. Yeah. We sat down with the journalist and said Leeds is really good, and she tried to get me to say I thought Giles Coren was a shit, and I said I thought he's all right.
We'll get to him. I've got him down here. Don't worry.
Can't trick me, journalists.
Fuck it. We'll talk about him now, shall we? So he doesn't like the north. He likes in his little London borough, and he's quite happy down there.
Hey, I think you're wrong.
Oh, okay.
I think he likes nice food, and I think he thinks Leeds doesn't have a restaurant scene in the style that he considers to be a restaurant scene, and I think he might be right. We've got some really nice restaurants, but we don't have enough for Giles Coren because he likes eating out.
Yeah, I mean, my issue is that he said Leeds' restaurant scene is rubbish and Liverpool's is far worse. And that was in an article for The Times.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, Liverpool came off worse, but not much. And then the BBC article then quoted him kind of saying that recent claims that the lack of a Michelin star is diminishing our standing as an eating destination, which I think was absolute bollocks.
Yeah, I think that firstly, Liverpool is worse. And also I don't think we have a rubbish restaurant scene, but what he's doing is being an inflammatory London journalist, which is what he's paid to do.
I slightly take back what I said
Yeah,
then.
well, yeah, it could be better. We have an amazing scene that does other things really, really well. I don't think we have an amazing restaurant scene. I think we have an all-right restaurant scene with some really outstanding gems, and I think we could probably do better at that. I don't know how we do better at that, and I don't know why we don't do it very well. I think that his point about having a Michelin star is probably bollocks, because I don't care. Well, although I love Michelin star restaurants, I don't think, bloody hell, Friday night in Leeds, I've had a couple of beers. I'm just going to drop 75 quid on a tasting menu. Way.
You see, Giles Coren didn't say this, so I can agree with it. But I do think the lack of a Michelin star restaurant does affect Leeds. I think I think the street food side of things is fantastic. I think having that diversity is fantastic. But at the same time, if you want to celebrate something special, you might not want to go to the same places you go every weekend, or whatever. So I think we are missing some higher dining. We are missing the tasting menus and stuff. I went to Van Zelle in Harrogate the other week, and that was amazing. In fact, like, if Harrogate can have that, why can't we?
Does he have a star, Van Zelle?
Sorry?
Does Van Zelle have a star?
No, but I was talking to the waiter who was from the York Arms, and he was just like, I want to get this place to where the York Arms is, and I think that we need something like that. I think Man Behind the Curtain might be on its way to that.
I think Man Behind the Curtain, having been to the excellent Lane's X Man Behind the Curtain Leeds Indie Food Brunch on Sunday, I think Man Behind the Curtain might be on the way to that, definitely. He's a very, very talented man, and it's an excellent restaurant. I think that I went to Anthony's he never had a star, Anthony, which was kind of
Anthony's not the one the Coin Exchange, the other one, the proper
posh
Anthony's
where Dish is now.
Yeah.
I went to Anthony's and it was a lovely meal, but it was very formal, and he did a very good job of cooking all of the food, and I think maybe I've had a much nicer time at Bunderbust.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean about being celebratory and having something to go out to once a year, twice a year. The Man Behind the Curtain certainly does that. I think that's what Giles Coren is talking about in terms of a restaurant scene. And I don't know if it depends whether you're asked about Michelin stars, but really, we could do with a couple of celebratory kind of high-end restaurants. And I would certainly love to have them, and they can be part of Leeds Indie Food next year.
There you go. So, current trends at the moment in food. Let's not talk about pulled pork, please. I don't want to do that.
Not a current trend.
Okay. It's done to death, though, right?
Yeah.
So, what are the current trends that we're seeing at the moment?
In food.
That was a real fashion comment, wasn't it?
A fashion comment.
Sorry.
We've got. I think that in terms of street food, which is part of my background, we are seeing some really, really great stuff that is from kind of culinary genres that you don't know what it is. So on Friday and Saturday, we've got Leeds Feast at the Tetley, and they're two of my very, very favourite street food vendors are coming over for that. One of which is Yakamama, who do kind of pan-South American, I guess, but not in a kind of Las Iguanas awful way, in a kind of way where they make kind of tacos out of things you've never heard of, and like and plantain fries and all kinds of weird shit that it's amazing. And then also Arepa who do Colombian food, and then mainly do arepas, which are kind of Colombian bread things with things in.
Right.
And they're the trends, bread with things in. But it's things like that. It's kind of hyper local or hyper cool. like genre food, I guess is what it is, but doing it really, really well. I think there's so many people doing, and in a minute I'm sure you're going to ask me about Ben Davies' article in Munchies, but there's so many people doing really, really generic street food stuff from cash and carries that the things that are coming through and shining through and getting invited to events, because that's part of what we do as Leeds Indie Food. We invite people to do events and we curate things, is we want the people who are doing amazing stuff. We want people who are doing like Ukrainian food or you know, whatever, Colombian food and stuff like that. It's that kind of thing that's beginning to shine.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that you can take some of these corporate models that are just like brandishing, like Las Iguanas is probably a great example actually, because it is terrible, but people look at that and then they go, well, it's got the essence of a really great pop-up or something, and doing that really well, and that's what Ben's article was about. I don't know if anyone's read it, but Ben Davies' article in Vice for Munchies, I think it was. Is it a recent one? It was quite recent.
Yeah, it was like last week.
Yeah, so
it was a fun time for everyone when that one came out.
Yeah, so I think he got told to kind of bring out the aggro a bit more with it.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I don't think you're allowed in Vice unless you have a certain quota of calling people a cunt.
Yeah, and I think he did it like 4 times, so it was fine. But he talked about him.
Good for him. He might be here.
Hopefully not. But yeah, he talked about all the trends and stuff and exactly that kind of thing. I think he mentioned one of them you mentioned actually. I don't know if we're going to... People's always going to do a bad job of it. His point is that you could take any food trend, do a shit job of it, charge it a £5, and people will probably go, yeah, that was all right.
Charge it a £5? That's a bargain.
Charge you a tenner.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that part of the problem in street food is that it's become a thing called street food for a start. It might be time that we just called it food again.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it's not on the street. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, occasionally it is, but very rarely. I think that there's a lot of things you can buy in the cash and carry. I don't know if anyone's been to a cash and carry, but there's loads of tins. And
brioche bun aisle.
Yeah, you can buy a lot of brioche from cash and carries. I know someone who he did the Leeds International Beer Festival actually last year and sold burgers at it. So if anyone went, you might be able to work out who that was. And he'd realised there weren't any brioche in the cash and carry, and so had to go to Marks and Spencer's on Briggate and buy his entire brioche stock from the Marks and Spencer's shop, which is very, very expensive. And then I think probably didn't make any money for the entire.
Can you imagine putting that through the self-service as well? That'd be a nightmare.
Exactly. And also how soul destroying it is to buy brioche from Marks and Spencer's and then sell it for less than you bought it for.
It's not a £5, is it?
Yeah, no. So the thing about Ben Davies' article is it was true, and there's a lot of people that serve really, really terrible shit in brioche, and it's a lot of someone I really, really like, actually, who I'm not going to name, who I think is really, really funny, and I really enjoy his company, and I would never eat his food. At the start of his business operations as a street food vendor, went into Booker's, which is a large catering cash and carry run by the same people who run Macro, and said, what is the cheapest cut of pork that you can do? And they said, it's pork shoulder without this bit. And he said, can I have 1,000 of those, and do they freeze? And there he built his business kind of off the back of that. And there's a lot of that, really. There's a lot of kind of dude food. Can I have a big burger?
Yeah.
And it'll be £1 for a pineapple and £1 for a bit of cheese and £1 for a bit of chilies and £1 for a bit of whatever, and stack it high. But yeah, I think that there's a place for that, and when I'm, I'll be working a lot of festivals, but I'll be going to Glastonbury as a consumer, I guess, which is something I do every year, and when I'm really fucked, I'm definitely going to pay £10 for some absolute shit, I'm sure, and think it's absolutely great.
But you're not there for the...
No, exactly. Well, no, I sort of am.
Well, yeah, but...
It's nice stuff to buy when you're not all really pissed.
Of course, but if it was just a field, you probably wouldn't be there.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to touch on something we mentioned a little bit ago, which was the lack of street food on the streets. I know that there's Leeds City Council, I'm sure it's not alone in doing this, but there's quite, they ask and demand quite a lot from each vendor to actually be placed on the street. Is there anything that we can do about that to make that better? Because I feel like it's a real shame that we haven't got street vans.
There are 2 things we can do better. They've got a bit better, actually, recently. For a long time, we kind of were lobbying them to stop asking for annual rents, which is a thing. So you might have noticed that Fishan's, Andrew Critchett, used to be on Commercial street outside Lush and Halifax and Foot Locker, selling quite nice fish and chips, and then he suddenly wasn't there anymore. And that was because he had to pay for a year's worth of rent, and some days when it rains you take 15 quid, which is not enough to sort of support a business. Now they do let you rent by the day or by the month, so there are street food pitches in town. There are people that are occupying them on a regular basis at the moment. I think most of those people are churning out good but popular food. So there'll be pizzas and there'll be burritos, and there probably will be someone doing. There's the weird quinoa caravan. I don't know how he's.
Where's that? I've not seen that.
On just off Brigger. Does anyone know what the road is called? It's sort of by Debenhams.
Everyone, Debenhams shoppers love quinoa. Then clearly,
we walked past it once, and a man said, "What is quinoa, and what does it taste like?" And then the guy in the caravan said, "I wasn't expecting you to ask that," which just seems like probably something you would expect if you're running a quinoa caravan. There's a quinoa caravan, and there's the sweet corn man, but apart from that, it's basically the.
So just hipsters that know exactly what it is and what they want.
The sweet corn man is not a hipster.
No, I mean the quinoa guy.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I'm not calling sweet corn hipster. Don't worry.
The sweet corn man. No,
that's been around for a while.
Someone tweeted us during the festival and said the sweet corn man is offering 10% off for Leeds Indie Food passport holders, and for a while we thought it might not be a joke, but I think it was a joke.
It's a good troll.
Apart from the quinoa caravan, everyone in Leeds that has a regular pitch is offering quite saleable food that people who aren't all of us who enjoy brilliant food would buy on their lunch break. So that says something about the levels of rents and stuff like that. I think that something we've asked the council or talked to the council about before, and maybe we would like to explore further, this is my number one point, is the idea of food pods, which is a thing. If anyone's been to Portland, in Oregon, and they have an amazing street food culture, and that's because at a certain point in Oregon's history they decided that you didn't have to pay all of the taxes and business rates that restaurants have to pay if your restaurant had a wheel on it. So it can stay in the same place for all of the days of the year, as long as theoretically you could move it in a day if they asked you to.
Right.
So there's amazing car parks and outside bars, and there's sort of 3, 4, 10, 12, 15 pods of street food vendors all over the city, and you can go and they're amazing, and some of them are shit, but most of them are amazing. And they don't have to pay the same taxes, and it's easier, and it's an easy startup, and if you want to become a chef, you start off in a street food van, and it's that kind of thing where they're permanent and there's space for them and they make space for them and people use them. It's not individual things, and it becomes part of a culture. So if on Brigger we had 5 street food vans every day, and they were there every day, people would get it. But it takes a while for them to get it. The second thing is that it rains all the fucking time. So really you don't want to sit on a bench and eat nice fish and chips or an amazing Colombian taco or whatever. Really you want to take it back to your office, and there's only so many foods you can wrap up viably.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really do much about the second point, sadly. But I think the first one's an interesting one. I mean, from a business perspective, it makes sense to play it safe and go for maybe the baked potatoes and stuff, because definitely. You know you're going to get that income. I guess the second thing is that you want to make sure that Leeds. Your moustache made a pop then?
No, it was my.
All right.
It's my marriage.
Having cracking candy before you came on or something. The second thing is that I guess Leeds City Council and other councils need to come around to the way that street food works, and you need that flexibility because trends change and you need to be able to change with it.
I mean, they produced a really excellent report last year when they changed to this kind of daily licensing thing that they've got now, where they said we've looked at the scene in the city and we've suddenly realised that actually people really like buying things from carts in the street. So why don't you do this? After sort of maybe 2 years of everyone working in the industry saying, here's an idea, why don't you let us rent it by the day or by the week? And they sort of suddenly discovered that it was their idea about a year ago. But there needs to be provided space if they want it to be a thing. And they don't have to want it to be a thing. It's perfectly viable to be a council who doesn't think that there should be any street food. As someone who enjoys it, that makes sense to me. But I don't think they're enormous business rate payers, and they don't pay enormous amounts of corporation tax. No one I know in street food owns anything above a really, really shitty transit van. Like, that's one of the things that is quite annoying in street food. as a cook or as someone who runs trailers for other people or whatever, is that there's a lot, anytime there's an article on The Guardian or an article on Vice or wherever, or even in the Yorkshire Post, there's 10 people who will say, oh, I bought a burger for £7, and these people, people with beards, they're rolling in it. They must be so rich. Not a single person is rich or anywhere near rich, apart from maybe a few people who run various combinations of events and take percentages of everyone else. Nobody makes any money.
Yeah.
Everyone has a nice free burger. Everyone enjoys not being in an office, and everyone is absolutely dirt poor. Basically, no one sees their families. It's rubbish, and also you get nice food.
So after that really positive note, should we move on from that?
Yeah.
Basically,
if anyone wants it as a career, it's great. It's a great career.
No one starts it as like, I'm going to make millions, though, surely.
No.
Unless you're in London and you're thinking, I can do something with this.
There's a few people who you can tell are moving to restaurants, and there's a few people who are very canny at what they do, but those people are also lucky, I think, because there's lots of people who are canny at what they do and want to move into restaurants and really don't.
I think people look at they look at some of the successes and think that's how it is.
Yeah.
The same as any big tech company, people think, oh, I'm going to make the next Facebook.
Yeah.
You're not, are you really?
No, not at all. Like Meat Liquor did well, but
Yeah.
I don't think they were really... That wasn't really a street food thing. They had a trailer, and then everyone thought it was great because there weren't any others around. And then they said, I've got millions of pounds. Do you want me to give it to you to open a restaurant? If anyone's got millions of pounds, I will have it to open a restaurant.
Don't give it to me, Liquor. Give it to you. Cool. Unsung heroes in Leeds. We've talked about the people we know about. Are there any ones that you think? I mean, I know you mentioned earlier. There's a few people coming to the Leeds feast that you really respect. But apart from them, are there any others that you think people need to know about?
Unsung heroes in Leeds. I don't know about unsung heroes. There's certainly people that I think are about to explode into being really, really good.
Okay.
And I don't know how they're going to do it.
Right.
I think that if anyone's come across Lane's Brunch or Trestle, that's the work of someone called Carl who works at Lane's Espresso.
Yeah.
And he is really good at cooking. And at some point someone's going to say, Carl, don't work at Lane's Espresso. I'll make you this restaurant. You have this restaurant, and then that'll be really good. And there's sort of people like that around Leeds who do their kind of little stuff, and they do it for other people, or they do it in certain ways, and you think, like, this is fucking great. Like, I really want this to be a thing I can get every week. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a few people that are just aching to have an amazing thing go on. Sounds a bit awful, doesn't it? Ben, I think, to be fair as well, Ben Davey from here, who does Patty Smiths and Doughboys, you can cook really amazing burgers and you can cook really amazing pizza, and I mean, there are things in the works with everyone's always developing, everyone's always got new projects and stuff like that, but I can't wait to see what he does when he's got a massive barbecue or something like that. There's people in Leeds that it's not so much that no one's singing their praises, it's that we're waiting for their potential to be unleashed, and that kind of thing, I think.
It'd be awesome to see someone who's quite humble in what they do, rather than just seeking funding to explode it and make it massive.
Definitely. Like, no, she'll never do it, but if someone gave Manjit from Manjit's Kitchen a little restaurant, it would be so good. Yeah. Like, it would be really, really good, because she only ever cooks 3 things in her horse box. And to be honest, she'd really, really panic if someone gave her a restaurant. They don't really deal well with more than 3 people in a queue. But if someone gave her a bar or a restaurant and said, cook your amazing Indian street food, and just sell like 3 bottles of beer, it would be absolutely brilliant.